Hi, today's lesson is a slightly different one. It's on what I call like a secret, or my secret trick to liven up your lead playing. This is one it's not really a secret because I'm always going through this with my own sort of private pupils. But this is a really good one, I think. It's something I've used with people for years. And a common thing that happens is someone will come along for a lesson and say that they're a bit bored by their own lead playing and they're improvising, and they could sound perfectly good to me or to someone else listening, but because they're hearing themselves every time they play, they're getting a bit bored of hearing the same phrases and the same notes. And there's a few little tricks you can do to help with this, but this one is quite a simple one. And all it is you practice using the ninth. I'll explain what that is in a minute. Using the ninth instead of the root note. So you get rid of the root notes and you replace them with a ninth. Now I should point out this is the exercise. You wouldn't do this every time you solo because there's nothing wrong with playing root notes. That's probably the best note to use. But to change your sound a little bit, if you just get rid of the root notes as an exercise, put ninths in instead every time. In case you don't know, the ninth on a guitar, the ninth is 2 frets up from the root note. So if I'm in the key of, for example, B minor, like most guitarists, I'd use a B pentatonic minor mostly for soloing like this. Might also use that note, which is the next note if you're going to go into the next octave. So I've got this set of notes, and I could just improvise with those. Now, without really thinking about it, I keep landing on B notes when I'm doing that. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's where my ear's leading me every time. There's the B note, there's another one, there's another one. And if I just played and sort of fiddled around, I'd end up just landing on those 3 notes all the time. And like most people, that's what everyone tends to do. And as I keep saying, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to change your sound a bit, a really quick way is to get rid of those 3, and every time you go to land on one, you go to the ninth instead, which is 2 frets up. So every time I go to land on this note, I'll play that instead. And I maybe will go to hit this note and quickly slide up to the ninth instead. So a phrase that might have been this becomes this. Now, to see how this really works in sort of context, you really need a chord to be underneath this. But you can use your imagination for the moment and hear that that's got a slightly different sound, slightly more interesting sound perhaps than the first thing I played. I'll do another example. With the ninth. And there's lots of ways you can do this. One way that people like Dave Gilmour use it is they'll do a bend, a standard bend from the 7th of or the minor 7th of the key, which is this note, up to sound like the root note, which is that note, the B. So it's this. That's what everyone does. Dave Gilmour would do something like this. So it's a bend, standard bend, and straight away let the bend down very quickly, slide along 2 and do it again, just all with the one pick. In slow motion, that's quite effective. He'll also bend it to the root note as I did initially, and then stay in the same place and push it further. That's a bit harder. So that's one way you can get to the ninth instead. But it's a great exercise to actually try to avoid the root note. And it's difficult. You'll be so used to landing on the root notes all the time. But you almost need a little buzzer to go off or something every time you hit a root note, and you quickly then move to the ninth instead. So I'll play some phrases landing on the root notes like I normally would, first of all. Now I'll do some similar things, but I'll avoid the root notes. I'll try to. The main thing that happens here is by trying to do this, you'll completely change your phrases. Like my phrases that second time were completely different to what I was doing the first time, and I wasn't trying to make them different. I was so aware of thinking about don't hit a root note, don't hit a root note, go for the ninth, that it just changed how I was playing. And the result is that you end up with different sounds coming out to the usual ones, which is the aim in the first place. But I must stress, this is an exercise. I'm not saying when you play a solo avoid root notes, because that's not the best way to go about it. But by doing this exercise, you can then use bits of it in your playing, and occasionally you can go to a ninth instead of a root note and use it sort of sporadically, and it works really well. Okay, I hope you like that lesson and it makes sense. Please comment below if it doesn't, and if you do, then click like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Okay, thanks.